At 6:23 a.m. on December 21st, 1939, a 5'3" Finnish farmer named Simo Häyhä lay buried in a snowbank along the Kolla front. Ahead of him, nearly 400 meters away, a Soviet patrol crept between the white-barked birch trees. Simo, 34 years old, clutching a simple hunting rifle with no scope, had no military reputation to his name. 0 confirmed kills when he arrived. The Red Army expected him, and every man beside him, to be swept away within days. 3 entire Soviet divisions had been sent to crush this narrow sector. 450,000 Soviet troops, pushing against barely 32,000 Finnish defenders. Soviet command predicted a 2-week war. They gave Finland 72 hours before collapse. Simo had been on the line for 21 days straight. The temperature hovered at 38 degrees. Skin froze solid in under 2 minutes. The standard Finnish service rifle, the M27 with optical scope, sat untouched in his tent. Every other Finnish soldier relied on it. Simo rejected it. Instead, he carried his personal M28-30 hunting rifle, iron sights only, the same weapon he had used since age 17 to stalk elk and moose in the forests of Ruokolahti. His officer, Letes Utala, called him foolish. "This is war," he warned. "Civilians use hunting rifles, soldiers use scopes." Simo calmly explained why he wouldn't. A scope forces your head 3 centimeters higher. In deep snow, 3 centimeters is the difference between disappearing and dying. A scope catches sunlight. One reflection is all it takes to reveal your position. A scope fogs instantly below freezing. 1 breath, 1 clouded lens, 5 seconds blind, and 5 seconds in a sniper duel is suicide. Utala shrugged. "Fine, use your little rifle. But when a Soviet sniper kills you because you couldn't see through those primitive sights, don't expect sympathy." Simo replied, "I won't need sympathy. I'll be dead." That was December 1st. 20 days later, he had 37 confirmed kills, and Soviet commanders were deploying counter-sniper teams specifically to hunt him down. The patrol moving through the birch trees that morning wasn't a standard squad. 6 men, all with scoped Mosin Nagants, all wearing higher quality winter camouflage, all moving with deliberate precision. They were trained Soviet sharpshooters, veterans of Spain, Mongolia, and conflicts nobody bothered to remember. They weren't patrolling. They were hunting Simo. They didn't know his name. They only knew that someone along the Kolla front was killing Soviet soldiers at a rate no manual could explain. They called him simply the target. Simo watched them through plain iron sights, nothing but a front post and a small rear notch. The same setup he had used to take rabbits at 300 meters when he was a child. The Soviets advanced in textbook counter-sniper formation. 2 scouts forward, 3 riflemen in the center, 1 security man in the rear. Every 30 meters they stopped, scanned, waited. They were 400 meters away now. Too far for iron sights, according to every military manual on Earth. But Simo had already dropped elk at 450 meters with this very rifle. He made wind and distance corrections. He identified the leader immediately. Officers always reveal themselves by their posture, even when trying not to. Snow filled his mouth. A technique he invented during his first week in combat. Warm breath meeting cold air creates a visible white cloud, a plume that screams sniper to anyone watching. With snow packed in his mouth, his breath melted silently. No vapor, no signature, no betraying cloud. The Soviet officer raised his binoculars, staring directly at Simo's position. Simo remained motionless. He had shaped this firing nest 4 hours before dawn. A shallow depression in the snow. No sandbags, no logs, nothing artificial. Snow packed tightly in front of the muzzle to prevent the blast from kicking up a revealing burst of powder. When he fired, the snow absorbed everything. The Soviets saw nothing. They advanced. When they reached 380 meters, Simo exhaled, steadied the front sight on the officer's chest and squeezed the trigger. The shot cracked across the frozen forest. The officer collapsed instantly, body limp before it struck the snow. The remaining 5 dove for cover, tree trunks, drifts, anything. They still had no idea where the shot had come from. Simo chambered another round. Smooth, silent. One Soviet exposed his shoulder briefly. Simo fired again. Hit. Not fatal, but out of the fight. 4 left. The Soviets tried to follow doctrine. lay down suppressive fire, attempt to flank, overwhelm the sniper's position, but doctrine didn't matter if you couldn't locate the enemy. Simo's position was invisible. No flash, no vapor, no disturbed snow, nothing. 2 Soviets opened fire blindly, shooting 50 meters off target. Simo watched calmly through his sights as they wasted ammunition. When the 3rd Soviet attempted a textbook 60-meter sprint to a new tree, Simo tracked the movement, led the target, and fired, hit mid-stride, dead before he fell. 3 remained, 2 still firing at nothing. The last one understood what was happening. He bolted, sprinting towards Soviet lines, weaving through the trees. Simo let him go. The fear he would carry back was more valuable than the kill. The final 2 Soviets fired for another half-minute before realizing they were alone. They fled as well. Simo didn't shoot. He didn't need to. 5 Soviets dead, 1 wounded, all in under 6 minutes, all with a hunting rifle that had no optics. That day, December 21st, Simo killed 11 more soldiers. By week's end, the Soviets had given him a name, Belaya Smrt, the White Death. By early January 1940, Simo Häyhä had become a rumour the Red Army desperately hoped was false. Soviet commanders refused to believe one man, armed with a simple iron sight rifle, was responsible for the trail of bodies stacking along the collar front. Yet every patrol sent to silence him ended the same way. Men vanished in the snow and never returned. Temperatures plunged to 40 degrees Celsius, freezing rifle bolts solid, unless warmed under armpits. Soviet soldiers struggled simply to breathe. Their sweat turned to ice beneath their collars. But Simo moved through this frozen hellscape with the ease of a man strolling through his backyard. This was the environment he was raised in. Winters in Karelia weren't a challenge, they were home. His daily routine bordered on inhuman. He would slip into position hours before dawn, crawling through the snow in complete silence. Once in place, he did not speak. He did not shift. He did not rise to stretch aching muscles or warm frozen fingers. He remained still for 10 to 12 hours straight, waiting, watching. Officers often found him half buried in snow, completely motionless except for his eyes. His comrades joked that Simo didn't need a uniform. He simply became the terrain. But the Soviet High Command was done with jokes. They assembled specialized sniper hunter teams, men equipped with scopes, grenades, and superior camouflage, sent for one purpose: find and eliminate the phantom killing their soldiers. One of these elite Soviet marksmen arrived on January 8th. He was a decorated sharpshooter with combat experience stretching back to the late 1920s. He had studied enemy tactics, memorized Finnish terrain patterns, and understood counter-sniper maneuvers. His orders were delivered in 3 words: follow the bodies. It didn't take long. Finnish patrols discovered the counter-sniper's position first. His body, face down in the snow, a single bullet hole clean through his faceplate. Simo had spotted him before he had even settled into position. That kill changed everything. If standard infantry feared the White Death, Soviet snipers feared him even more. Every marksman sent against him learned the same truth. Simo Häyhä wasn't just a good shot, he was a ghost wrapped in white, a master of patience and instinct, someone who understood the forest better than the men who grew up in it. By mid-January, Simo's confirmed kills had soared past 150. His legend spread so fast that Soviet commanders began ordering artillery strikes on any patch of forest suspected of hiding him. Entire sections of woodland were pounded with shells, not because of Finnish troop movement, but because one man might be somewhere inside. On January 20th, a Soviet artillery unit fired more than 6,000 shells into a single hillside after spotting movement they believed belonged to Simo. He walked out of that bombardment without so much as a scratch. His own officers were stunned. One asked him, "How did you survive?" Simo simply shrugged. "I moved when the ground moved." That day alone, he eliminated 8 more Soviet soldiers. He didn't brag. He didn't even smile. He just cleaned his rifle, ate a piece of hard bread, and prepared to do it all again the next morning. But Soviet intelligence was adjusting. If a rifleman couldn't kill him, and a sniper couldn't kill him, and artillery couldn't kill him, there was only one method left: find him when he was least prepared, ambush the White Death in broad daylight. And on February 17th, they tried. On the morning of February 17th, the forest was silent in a way that only deep winter can create. No wind, no crack of branches, no distant rifle fire. A silence so sharp it felt like the world was holding its breath. Simo Häyhä was moving through a low ridge east of Kolla, searching for a new firing position. It was one of the rare times he wasn't already dug in before sunrise. He had barely lowered himself into a shallow snow hollow when he sensed something wrong. The woods felt occupied, not by standard infantry, not by scattered patrols, but by men who moved slowly, deliberately, and with purpose. This was not random activity. This was a hunt. Simo didn't know it yet, but a specially assembled Soviet assault group over 24 men had been deployed to kill him. They were not typical troops. These were hand-picked soldiers, trained to move quietly, armed with grenades and semi-automatic rifles, supported by a heavy machine gun concealed behind the tree line. Their mission was simple: no retreat, no hesitation, find and eliminate the White Death. They formed a wide arc, gradually tightening around Simo's estimated location. The Soviets didn't rely on luck anymore. They relied on mathematics. They had charted his previous kills, measured the distances, and drawn overlapping circles until they pinpointed where he must be operating. For the first time in weeks, they were close. Too close. Simo spotted the first soldier at 120 meters, a faint silhouette moving between two fir trees, brushing snow from his coat. His movement was subtle, controlled. Not the careless stumble of a young recruit. A veteran. Simo lowered himself deeper into the snow, masking his outline. He waited. The Soviet advanced cautiously, pausing every few steps. Simo stayed still. He didn't blink. He didn't tighten his grip. He simply observed. Patience was his greatest weapon. But then a second silhouette appeared, and a third. He realized this wasn't a small recon patrol, but a coordinated sweep closing in on him from multiple angles. Simo shifted his rifle only a few centimeters, just enough to align iron sights with the lead soldier's chest. He exhaled slowly. His breath didn't show. Snow in the mouth hid everything. The first shot cracked sharply through the trees. The lead Soviet dropped instantly. Before the others could react, Simo rolled onto his side, repositioning his rifle with lightning speed, and fired again. Another soldier went down, hit cleanly in the neck. The Soviet squad broke formation, yelling commands and firing wildly into the tree line. Bullets hissed over Simo's position, splintering bark and tearing into ice. He remained perfectly calm. When one of the Soviets rushed forward to toss a grenade, Simo shot him mid-stride. The grenade slipped harmlessly into a drift and exploded in a muffled thump. The firefight escalated. A heavy machine gun opened up from the ridge, spraying long bursts at anything resembling a firing nest. Simo kept crawling, small, disciplined movements, never straight, always angled, always unpredictable. The machine gunner adjusted too slowly. Simo stopped behind a fallen branch, steadied his rifle, and took the shot. The machine gun fell silent. By the time Soviet survivors regrouped, half their unit was dead or wounded, and they still had not seen their enemy clearly. They pulled back, dragging casualties through the snow, shouting for covering fire. Simo, bleeding slightly from a splinter lodged in his cheek, stood up only when the forest was quiet again. He walked away slowly, leaving behind no tracks anyone could follow. He reported the encounter to his officer with a simple sentence. "They tried very hard today." His officer asked how many he counted. Simo wiped a streak of frozen blood from his jaw. 10, he answered, maybe more, hard to see through the smoke. That day, his tally rose again. But the Soviets weren't finished. If a hunting squad couldn't kill him, they would escalate further. They prepared something far more aggressive, something that would come within seconds of ending the White Death forever. By late February, Simo Häyhä had become more than a sniper. He was a symbol, a ghost in the snow. Every Soviet soldier in the Kola sector knew that movement could mean instant death. But now the Red Army decided to try one final desperate tactic. They sent a full rifle company, 120 men, into his hunting ground. Their orders were ruthless: sweep the area, kill everything, leave no survivor. Morning fog hung low over the forest, reducing visibility to barely 100 meters. Normally, such conditions would favor a large, organized force. For a single sniper, it should have been a nightmare. Simo had anticipated this. Months of experience told him exactly how to exploit both terrain and enemy psychology. He didn't retreat. Instead, He had prepared 3 separate firing positions within a 200-metre stretch. Each was invisible to the untrained eye, each offered clear sightlines to the likely approach routes, every detail accounted for: distance, wind, concealment, cover. The Soviet company advanced. First target appeared at 380 metres. Simo waited, calm as ever. One shot, then another every 6 to 8 seconds. 7 soldiers down in less than a minute. The unit panicked, scattering, attempting to locate the shooter. Orders were shouted. Bullets sprayed in every direction. Simo didn't stay put. He moved 60 metres northwest to his second position, repeating the pattern. 8 more Soviets dropped in under a minute. Officers struggled to maintain control. Their men froze or retreated blindly. Finally, he moved to the third position, continuing his systematic, unhurried precision. By the time the Soviets attempted to reorganize and withdraw, 23 soldiers lay dead, all the work of a single man using iron sights on a hunting rifle. The company's cohesion shattered, their morale utterly destroyed. The Soviets realized they could not enter certain sections of the Kola sector without extreme risk. They began avoiding it altogether, accepting casualties as inevitable. This was psychological defeat. 150,000 soldiers could not face one man who knew the terrain better than they knew their own tactics. Finnish officers took notice. Lieutenant Utilan, who had mocked Simo's rifle weeks earlier, formally apologized. Finnish command promoted him to lance corporal, not because of protocol, but because his kill count had become legendary. By February 1st, Simo's tally reached 259 confirmed kills in 63 days. Every Finnish soldier knew his name now, the White Death. The Soviets whispered it in fear. Rumours spread faster than bullets. Simo never bragged, he never claimed glory. To him, every shot was just part of the hunt. His iron-sighted rifle was sufficient, because mastery of environment mattered far more than the latest equipment. By mid-February, Soviet command abandoned all attempts to hunt him directly. Specialized sniper teams, artillery strikes and diversions had failed repeatedly. Simo had demonstrated a simple truth. Survival and lethality were not determined by doctrine or equipment, but by knowledge, patience, and instinct. By early March, something had shifted on the battlefield. The Soviets no longer entered the forest with confidence. They entered with fear. Every snapped twig, every flutter of snow from a branch, every shadow between the trees could mean one thing: the White Death was watching. Yet the Soviet High Command refused to accept humiliation. They needed a decisive response, something overwhelming, so they deployed a weapon far more brutal than rifles or snipers: artillery saturation, designed not to kill one man, but to erase the entire landscape he stood on. On March 6th, the silence of Kola shattered. It began with a low rumble, like distant thunder. Then, within seconds, the forest erupted. Hundreds of shells crashed into the snow-covered hills. Trees splintered into jagged shards. Entire sections of forest floor lifted into the air. The sky turned black with smoke and soil. This wasn't targeting. A sniper can be targeted. This was punishment, destruction, an attempt to sweep away the ground he walked on. Simo had felt the shift in the wind before the first shells hit. Instinct, pure hunter's instinct, told him something was coming. He dove behind a fallen pine, pressing himself flat as the barrage intensified. The concussive force hammered his ears, shook the earth beneath him, and turned the air into a storm of debris. For 15 minutes, the Soviets unleashed hell on a single ridge. When the barrage stopped, silence returned. An unnatural silence, the kind that follows devastation. Smoke drifted between shattered trunks. Snow had turned black. The forest floor was cratered and torn. Most soldiers would have crawled away, shaken and deafened, but not Simo. He rose, brushed snow from his coat and checked his rifle. Not a crack, not a bend, still perfect. His face remained expressionless, as if the bombardment had been nothing more than heavy weather. He moved forward, stepping lightly around craters, knowing the Soviets would now send troops to inspect the damage, and they did. A fresh Soviet platoon advanced cautiously, rifles raised, expecting to find nothing but wreckage. They believed no human being could survive what they had just unleashed. But Simo Häyhä did. As soon as the first soldier stepped into his sight line, Simo fired, then again and again, calm, measured, icy. The Soviets panicked. Their artillery hadn't killed the White Death, it had only reminded him he was still needed. The platoon fell back, leaving bodies in the snow. For Simo, this was not retaliation. It was duty. His homeland was behind him, and the enemy was in front of him. Everything else was irrelevant. By nightfall, Finnish officers confirmed the aftermath. 28 additional Soviet soldiers killed. All from the man the Soviets had just tried to destroy. The bombardment had failed. The legend had only grown stronger. March 6th, 1940. Simo Häyhä had been in his microtrench, near a frozen creek, since 4:30 a.m., eyes scanning the snowy expanse. The forest seemed alive, every branch, every snowdrift a possible threat or opportunity. The Soviets, desperate to break his streak, unleashed a random artillery bombardment, hoping sheer chaos would finish him. The shells rained down with terrifying intensity. Trees exploded, snow turned to clouds of ice and dust. The earth shook beneath him. One shell landed only 40 meters away, close enough to throw him off balance. Simo felt the shockwave, lost consciousness for a brief moment. When he came to, pain tore through his face. Blood covered his hand. He realized immediately this was no ordinary wound. A special explosive round, illegal under the Geneva Convention, had struck him near the jaw. It tore off most of his lower jaw, destroyed part of his left cheek, obliterated several teeth. The medics who would later find him assumed he could not survive. Yet Simo, still conscious, still aware, crawled 200 meters through the snow, leaving a trail of blood, determined to reach safety. Finnish soldiers found him 20 minutes later. They assumed he was dead, yet he was alive. Barely. He was transported to a field hospital where doctors prepared for the worst. Medics expected him to die within hours, citing massive tissue damage and blood loss. But Simo Häyhä refused death. By March 13th, the day the Winter War ended, Simo awoke from a 7-day coma. It was considered a miracle. Doctors claimed survival was impossible. They warned that even if he lived, the brain trauma might leave him vegetative. Simo proved them wrong. He could think, understand, and slowly regain control, though his face required years of reconstructive surgery. Simo's final kill count was staggering. 505 confirmed sniper kills, plus roughly 200 additional kills in close combat with a Suomi KP-31 submachine gun. In 97 days, he averaged 5.2 kills per day, using nothing more than a hunting rifle with iron sights. His effectiveness was not in equipment but in understanding the environment. Deep forests, frozen rivers, snowdrifts, and sub-zero temperatures became his allies. He adapted hunting strategies honed over decades, exploiting weaknesses in Soviet doctrine. Every tree, every shadow, every mound of snow was potential cover or concealment. The Soviets had artillery, tanks, and air support, yet they were forced to avoid sectors Simo operated in, psychologically defeated. Finnish officers who had mocked his rifle months earlier now respected him. Lieutenant Utilan formally apologized. Simo was promoted to Lance Corporal, not for protocol, but because his kill count and battlefield impact made him indispensable. Soldiers whispered his name, the White Death. Soviets whispered it too. If you saw him, you were already dead. Post-war, Simo spent years recovering. Multiple surgeries reconstructed his jaw and cheek. He relearned how to speak and eat. His face remained disfigured, yet he survived. Returning to his village, he resumed farming and hunting, living quietly. He never boasted of his kills. When journalists asked about the 505 soldiers, he simply said he had done his duty. When asked about his tactics, he spoke of hunting techniques, not military strategy. Simo died on April 1, 2002, at 96 years old. He had lived 62 years after being shot in the face, outliving the Soviet Union, Stalin, and every soldier who had tried to kill him. His MTOS 830 rifle, the weapon of 505 confirmed kills, was donated to the Finnish Military Museum. It remains in a glass case, iron sights intact, with a plaque reading, Simo Häyhä, the White Death, 505 confirmed kills. Next to it, a photograph shows him at 34, standing in snow, rifle in hand, face expressionless, eyes fixed. There is no pride, no fear, only calm certainty. The legacy was not just the kills or the nickname, but proof that skill, innovation, and environment knowledge outweighed doctrine and equipment. Military analysts studied his methods for decades. They concluded that his unpredictability, ignoring standard sniper doctrine, moving and positioning based on instinct and terrain, made him nearly unkillable. Modern sniper training incorporates these lessons: micro-positions, muzzle flash suppression, vapor discipline, using terrain over technology, thinking like a hunter rather than a soldier. Simo Häyhä proved a single person could alter the psychological and physical battlefield. The Winter War, and specifically the Kolar Front, demonstrated that understanding your environment and trusting experience can surpass sheer numbers, advanced weaponry, or rigid doctrine. His story is now taught in military schools worldwide, not as a legend of bloodshed, but as a case study in effectiveness, adaptation, and survival. The White Death remains the deadliest sniper in recorded history, a 5 of 3 farmer whose iron sight hunting rifle bested entire divisions and reshaped military thinking. His life reminds us, sometimes the simplest tools in the hands of the right mind are unstoppable. If this story inspired you, hit like, subscribe, and share. Remember, legends like Simo Häyhä are not just history, they are lessons in skill, patience, and human resilience.